Welcome to the John Cady podcast. I'm John Cady, U.S. Navy retired, former minister. Tonight's podcast is a special one because I am reaching a milestone in my content creation and advocacy journey. This is the 60th episode since I relaunched my YouTube channel, and it's the 300th video that I've posted since I relaunched last year. For those who might have seen me years ago, I had a YouTube channel in 2011 to 2013, which also had 300 videos, all of which were short format with some noticeable differences. In the first run, many of my videos were politically motivated, sometimes leaning far to the right and sensationalist in nature, sometimes going into cringe territory. Content included topics that were deemed too controversial by YouTube standards, and some episodes were demonetized, including a particular video I shared about disgraced TV personality Jimmy Savile and the Operation U-Tree investigation. And because I mentioned him by name, it was demonetized. Another video that drew the wrong kind of attention, in particular from the federal government, was one where I read verbatim articles of impeachment that were posted by Congress on the House.gov website against then-President Barack Obama. It drew all kinds of attention, especially eyes that I didn't really expect to be watching my stuff. The title of the YouTube series in 2011 was Unhinged. That didn't sit well with viewers, and as a result, despite the amount of content I posted, it didn't draw too many subscribers. Even my own dad suggested that the title sent the wrong message, suggesting an unstable individual who is unpredictable. Amidst all that mess that was going on in 2013, I voluntarily deleted the channel and also deleted all the content to prevent any further backlash. At that time, I also didn't really understand how the comments or the algorithm worked. Therefore, I left the comments open, and it was ripe for trolls to enter and wreak havoc. Since the relaunch, most of my short-form videos consist of AI animation projects, which I do mostly for entertainment purposes, or short video commentaries of recent events, and many of those shed light on abuse survivors and the need for reform. The podcasts have focused on mostly survivor-based content, personal stories involving my family, or navigating grief following my girlfriend Cassandra's death last year, and music-related stories, most notably the What If series, and those have been pretty fun. I thank Professor of Rock for those. Some current events have been discussed, but I've refrained from fomenting responses from either the far right or the far left. And despite all this, the subscriber base is larger than it was during the first run. Another big difference is I've chosen to use my real name, which keeps everything simple and more accessible, and I also opted to restrict comments to preserve the integrity of the content. What does that mean? First off, the same output volume and completely different posture. 300 videos then, 300 now. And what matters? Well, the first run, it was driven by heat, urgency, identity formation, reaction to political moment, and a need to be heard. Now it's driven by discernment, pattern recognition, survivor-centered ethics, a longer memory, and a need to be accurate. Same work ethic, but very different wisdom. From sensation to stewardship. Back then, sensational framing, let's face it, I titled it Unhinged. It unintentionally framed me as the story. The political content drew institutional attention, which I didn't really want, and I was learning boundaries the hard way through consequence, i.e. the demonetization and the eventual decision to take everything down. The way it's being presented now is the content is the center, and the tone invites reflection instead of reaction. I've learned to name the harm and name the situation without turning it into a spectacle. That's important. The Jimmy Savile example is very telling. That demonetization wasn't about anything I did personally, but it was about platform fragility around accountability. But now I'm not really worried as much on the monetization, And I don't need to name names to expose systemic problems, which also invites for more participation from other abuse survivors, especially those who have come out of spiritually abusive systems. I'm learning as I'm going here that how it's said matters just as much as what's said. And I will give props to my dad for the decision to use my real name when I relaunched. Yes, my dad was right, because the title Unhinged suggested volatility, performative outrage, and a persona. Using my real name invites accountability, stability, ownership, and continuity. The comments. Back then, I didn't know that much about how the comments worked. I didn't curate them or control them, which made an open invitation for trolls to show up and wreak havoc and shape the perception of the content. The chaos diluted the message, but as I've learned, I now restrict the comments by design, and interaction is a power, not a perk. I make the decision as far as where the dialogue happens, if at all. About the only time that I really invite comments is on my live streams, which I usually do about every week or so. So if people want to comment there, that's fine. But again, I'm not changing my position as far as opening the comments section on anything else, because I want it to stay focused on the content. And the amazing thing is, with all these changes, I actually drew more subscribers than I did the first time, and with a lot less sensationalism. That's a big thing too. So what does that mean? 60 episodes of the podcast, 300 videos total, and it didn't implode like the first time. I'm not creating against something, I'm now creating for something. For survivors, for clarity, for accountability without hysteria, and for a record that will still make sense later. Now, going back in time, there was one episode out of all those that did draw a lot of views, and it drew views for the wrong reasons. It was a totally bizarre episode I posted. It was a commentary about a recipe book I stumbled across where people cooked recipes using semen. And the topic was so cringy that it even grossed me out, and it showed on camera. The reaction was probably what drew the views more than the content itself. And that's something I learned. Spectacle plus visible discomfort. It wasn't as much the people were clicking and watching because they wanted to know about a disgusting recipe book, but they wanted to see the person getting grossed out by it. And that ties into the algorithm itself. It loves recoil. It worked because the topic was shocking, my genuine disgust was obvious, and just like with a traffic accident, viewers were rubbernecking. It's called reaction bait, even before the term was common. People weren't tuning in to learn, they were watching me squirm. The content became secondary. And that success just simply doesn't age well. And looking back, I wouldn't post an episode or a commentary about that now because it spikes, but it doesn't last. It gets views, but there's not going to be any legacy with it. Whereas what's being discussed now, it provokes thought. Even the more whimsical music-related ones provoke thought because it's about, maybe if something had changed. Like I've already done two, and I'm probably going to be doing another one soon with the Village People about their notorious Renaissance album. They were such a wonderful group and so well liked during the height of the disco era. But the Renaissance album was such a train wreck and a chain of events, just everything that could go wrong did. And the way I've focused on presenting it is to show what would have happened if they had just chosen a couple things differently. They could have been viewed with a much deeper respect, even for their camp and their comical appearance, than what happened in real life. So it's a little slower, it's a little quieter. I seek to use facts, tying back to my past journalism training when I was in school, historical memory, and ethical restraint, which results in content that I don't have to apologize for down the road. I appreciate everybody who's been tuning in and everybody who's subscribed so far. This has been John Cady, and if you enjoy this content, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'm looking forward to catching you all on the next one.